listen, if you have ever turned down a salary offer because they weren't paying you what your last employer paid you, I want you to watch this video. All right, so listen, here's the deal. Everybody wants to get paid top dollar. You want to get paid top dollar. I want to get paid top dollar. And guess what? Your employer wants to get paid top dollar. The reality is that when you are working for somebody else, profit must be made. If profit is not made, then nobody gets to work. And unless you want to go out and be the employer, you have to keep that in mind, especially when you are negotiating your salary. So again, this advice today is simply for those who get stuck in the ideology that your next employer must pay you the exact amount that your last employer paid you, and or more or less. And if they don't, you aren't going to work, for that particular company. And it's your ideal company, is what you want to do. I just have some tips for you to consider, because I have coached countless of individuals who have found themselves in that position. And what ended up happening is that they may have taken a role with higher pay, but they didn't necessarily count the cost. They didn't count the emotional cost. They didn't count the travel cost. They didn't count the PTO loss. They didn't count the insurance costs of what the employer versus employer. That is not what this video is about, but you need to count the cost. Why don't you make sure that you go and watch the other video about counting the costs in interview negotiations? But something to consider, okay? If you are just like, no, Hennifer, I don't think you understand. The cost of living has gone up, and why would I want to get paid anything less? And I'm just saying, there's some things you might want to consider. I'm just giving you some tips from an HR point of view, from somebody who has seen organizational budgets, to someone who has coached folks who have taken 6 months or more in the market and they've wiped out their savings. And also for people who have been chasing money and thinking that money is the only thing that will keep them happy. And then they realize that it just does not make the mark for their happiness and fulfillment in life. So these are just some things to consider, okay? First things first, you want to know what you really need to make on an annual and monthly basis, okay? Meaning you got to know what your personal finances are. Gone are the days, and if you haven't watched some of my other videos about where the economy and where the job market is going, you want to watch that, because the reality is that 2024, the next few years, the job market is definitely changing, okay? And the economy is changing, okay? And you need to know what are the necessities in your life financially, and what are the wants in your life financially. Listen, I believe in abundance. Okay, so I am by no means saying that you have to limit what you desire and what you want in life or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying that you need to know on paper what those necessities are and what those wants are, so you can make more sound decisions when you are in fact negotiating your salary offer. Do you know that there are some people that negotiate salary simply based off of what their last role was, and not taking into account, all of the expenses? Now, we go through this exercise for our career strategy clients, and what some people recognize is that they actually need more than what even their last job was paying them, right? Or they need less, right? But they were maybe splurging in some other areas. So regardless of where you find yourself, you got to know how much you really need and how much you really want. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is that you have to understand. So if if an employer is making you a salary offer, let's just use really standard basic terms. Let's just say that your last job paid you $100,000 a year, and there's another position you've been interviewing for, but they're saying that their max is $90K. Now, I am not saying that you should not negotiate, blah, 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 blah. But I am saying that if the company comes back and says, no, for real, we cannot do 100K, we can only do 90K. In fact, this budget was only 80K and we had to move it up to 90K. but there might be some opportunity for growth after, we see the ROI, whatever it is, right? The second tip I want to provide you is to understand the real monthly and annual money difference. What do I mean by that? There are some people that they just look at what's on paper, again, and not necessarily understanding the money in working. Okay. So $100,000, when you look at that on a monthly basis without taxes, is $8,333, right? And I think the 90,000 is about 7,500. So when you look at that, it's like, oh my gosh, that's a difference of $833 every month. No, it's not. You don't get that in your paycheck when you're an employee. In fact, that amount, and again, depends on your tax bracket, where you live, but you will probably, that difference between those two is probably going to be around, $500 to $600 on a monthly basis. Now, I am not saying that that is not a big deal, but for some of you, you understand where I'm going with this already, right? So you can imagine the difference between salaries of 5,000. How much is the take home difference when you actually add the taxes? And is the drive and the commute for you getting more money, does that make up the difference from that take home pay? So again, understand what that difference in pay actually is. So on the end of when you are offered a lower salary, as well as the end where you're offered a higher salary. So you might say, oh, I'm going to the next job, whoever pays me more. And if you are going to another job because they are paying you more than your last job by a difference of 5,000, 5,000 is an increase, but I want you to count the cost. What does that increase actually look like in your take home paycheck? Okay. Once you include your health insurance, once you include the taxes, once you include the commute, many employers are making you come in the office now. The job that offers you the lower pay, imagine if they're 100% remote and you are like, I'm not taking it because it's not the exact amount that my last job offered me. Again, I'm not saying that this advice has to be for you, but these are just some things for you to consider. Okay. All right. So I want you to also know tip number 3. How long can you play the negotiation game before you have to make a decision? Okay. How long do you really have, right? There are some folks that are getting roles really fast, but what we have been seeing is that it's been taking folks a little longer to land, especially those that are experienced, to land a role. Okay. So again, know the market that you're in, depending on when you're watching this video. And that's why tip number 1 is so important. You got to know how long you actually can play the negotiation game. I'm not a fan of settling at all, right? But if you are, the sole provider for your household, there are different things that you have to consider that someone who has a 2-income household doesn't necessarily have to consider, or it may be vice versa, right? If you don't necessarily have savings, if you don't have any financial cushion, you got to take all of these things into consideration. How long can you play the negotiation game? Okay. What we have been seeing is that some folks, some employers or some candidates in the market right now. So what we've been hearing is that at a minimum, it's taken about 2 months, sometimes 3 months to find a new role. And on worst case scenario, it's been taking up to 6 months to find a new role or to find something that's suitable. So again, I am not wishing that upon you at all. These are just considerations to have, okay? And then the last tip, last but not least, is to consider your total compensation. I've been dropping those nuggets throughout this entire time. Don't just look at what the salary is. Look at total compensation. Look at the leave balances. Look at health insurance. Look at your commute, how long it's going to take you to get there. Look at your emotional toll. Are you spending enough time with your children, with your spouse? Are you, is your bucket going to be filled? Your soul bucket going to be filled when you have time for friends and family? All of those things are important. You cannot just look at a salary. Listen, jobs are never permanent unless you create one yourself. Jobs are never permanent, Okay, so it is important that we not make our jobs an idol, that we not make our jobs the savior of all the things in our lives, because it's just not realistic. So know what you want, put your plan in place, and go forth and be great. Listen, I hope these tips are helpful. Why don't you go ahead and comment below? Let us know what tips you might be taking away or any ahas that you received while watching this video. If you need some type of interview coaching or career strategy, why don't you go ahead and contact us and book your call today? Until next time, I'm Heather Gant. Don't forget to command your day.